The first tool I'm going to talk about is the selection tool right here. And you can see it's in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. If I hover my mouse over it, the selection tool actually pops up. So it tells us what tool I'm on, and it gives us the keyboard shortcut, which was V in this case. Then there's the direct selection tool, which is the white arrow right next to it, which is A for the shortcut. And then the pen tool just below it, and that shortcut is P. And the pen tool is what we're going to be focusing on today. Now, the pen tool is how we draw in Illustrator. And so I'm just going to start drawing here. I'm going to start drawing some lines. And the pen tool works a little differently than maybe the paintbrush that you might be used to, or maybe kind of a pencil tool in Photoshop. What's happening here is I am placing points because Illustrator is a vector program, meaning that it works with lines. And I'm creating this line by placing points. And then as I place these lines, I am dragging out these handles that go with those points. And those handles are affecting the curve of this line. And you can see that to do this, I have to click and drag, click and drag, click and drag. And by dragging, I am pulling out those handles for my Bezier curves and creating these curves. If I don't want a curve, all I need to do is click without dragging, and I'll create a corner. So you can see now that I have these kind of angular lines going on here. And then I can continue on just like I was before if I want curved lines again, just by clicking and dragging, clicking and dragging, clicking and dragging. Now, when I'm done with my shape, it is very important that you complete your shape. So you don't want to leave a space like this. You're going to want to hold your mouse over the first point you started with, and you can see that when I did that, a little circle appeared next to my pen tool. I'm going to click on that to complete my point, and there's my shape. I'm going to go over to my stroke over here, which is in the Properties panel, and I'm going to make my stroke a little thicker just so it's easier to see. Oh, that's much too thick. Maybe, how about this? That's a little thicker than it started with. If I want to, I can even just hold my mouse over that and just drag with 2 fingers up and down to change the stroke. I found that's a little difficult to do small increments, so I just go ahead and choose what I want. Now, if I wanted to, I could go over here to my fill, and I could fill that shape with a color, which is great. If I don't want a color, I can choose the white square right here with the red arrow in it. That means there's no fill, and I'm going to actually keep it no fill for now. And I'm going to hit Command Z on my keyboard and go back in time just a little bit. A little bit more. Okay, there we go. To before I had the shape completed. If you don't complete your shape, so I'm going to go up here and choose the selection tool. So my shape has not been completed, and I want to fill it with a color. You can see how Illustrator kind of imagines how the shape would be. It basically goes from the point you stopped at to the first point you started at, the shortest way. And again, I'm going to increase my stroke so you can see that a little better. You can also see that there is no stroke between these 2 points. Now in Illustrator, it wants shapes to be completed, and I'm going to be looking for this when I'm looking at your Illustrator files. So be sure that you're completing your shapes. So I'm going to grab my pen tool here because I can certainly complete this shape now. I can always edit and change it. So with my pen tool, I'm going to go back and click directly on the point that I stopped at. And I have gotten back into this shape, and I can click and drag and click and drag, and I can even go inside this shape here until I go back to the beginning. So now my shape has been completed. Now, once my shape is complete, there's a lot of ways that I can edit it. First, there's the Smooth tool, and I have the Smooth tool over here. The top tool on this is the Sharper tool. Now, how did I get to this menu here? You can see there's a little triangle in the lower right-hand corner of that tool right here. If I click and hold down on the mouse, this window comes up, and I'm going to choose the Smooth tool. And actually, it's not going to work because my shape isn't selected. So I'm going to grab my direct selection tool and click on my shape. Now my shape is selected, and I know that because I see the blue lines with the dots next to it. Now I'm going to grab my smooth tool again, and if I kind of click and kind of just drag over the lines, the smooth tool will adjust that and make my points just a little smoother, a little more precise. If I do it over a corner, it can round out that corner for me, or I guess make it sharper at times as well. So the smooth tool is a way that I can do some minor adjustments to the shape that I've made. I don't have a lot of control over it. There are some ways that you can adjust how much the smooth tool smooths, but I've found that the default works just fine. If I want something more specific, I want to be able to control things a bit more, I can go back to my pen tool and again click and hold in the lower right hand corner of that tool to get out these more tools that are living under the pen tool. The add anchor point tool with the plus on the keyboard. Oops, sorry, I let go there. The minus anchor point tool, which is the minus on the keyboard, or this anchor point tool, which is Shift C on the keyboard. So I'm going to go to the add anchor point tool, and this does exactly what it says. It adds anchor points. So if I click on my line, I can add an anchor point. Now, if I click off the line, or I'm just a little off, you're going to get this error. Illustrator will pop up and say, please add an anchor point to the segment of the path. If you're not right on the path, you might not be able to add that anchor point. I'm going to hit the A key on the keyboard to choose the direct selection tool, so that white arrow. And now I can grab these anchor points. Oops, I grabbed the Bezier curve instead. So I'm going to grab these anchor points and then I can adjust them. So that's a nice way that I can adjust points, and I can change the shape of these handles as well to adjust that curve. I can go to other points, do the same thing. So maybe I don't want this middle shape so intense, and then I can move my anchor points as well. So that is that. Now, I can use my delete anchor point if there's some points I don't like. Like this point, there's too many points there. I can hit the delete key, and maybe I don't want it to go out quite that far. And I might just make this whole thing that's sticking up, this whole shape, just a little shorter. So like that. So the delete anchor point deletes those anchor points, and the shape is adjusted from there. Then the last tool under this is the anchor point tool. I like the anchor point tool because it's a way that I can adjust these curves, or these handles and these Bezier curves. If I click on the center point of one of those points, I can click and drag out new curves. Now you want to be careful that you don't twist up your curves like this. So I don't want my curve to be twisted. This is bad. It's hard to work with, and I'll even pull it out just a little bit so that you can see that a little easier. So you see that now my shape is filled. This doesn't create negative space in my shape. It's just a shape that's part of the fill, but the stroke is now inside the shape. So when you are adjusting those Bezier curves, be careful not to twist your curves. I will also be looking for that in your Illustrator files. So I just used that anchor point tool, and I adjusted that. All right, so there is that. Now with the selection tool here, I can click on that, and what that does is it chooses my entire shape. So I no longer have the line of my shape chosen, just the shape itself. And I can move my shape around my canvas. I can scale it. So I can make it smaller, bigger, and you can see that now it's not proportion anymore. I'm going to hit Command Z and go back to before that. If I want to make my shape smaller, I can go to the corner, hold down the Shift key on the keyboard, and then I can scale my shape proportionally. All right, so there is that. Now I'm going to make one more shape here. So I'm going to hit the P key on the keyboard to get the pen tool back. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to create another shape, except I want a different color here. I don't want it to be the same color. And to do that, I'm just going to go over to my fill and I'll choose maybe the purple color there. So there is the shape. Now I'm going to show you something here with the Pathfinder tool. So I have my Pathfinder tool in my tool palette here, and if I click on it I will get the Pathfinder tool. If yours isn't there, what you can do, you just go up to the help menu and you type in Pathfinder, if I can type, and if I hover over Pathfinder you can see that that tool is in the Effect menu under Pathfinder. So whenever you can't find a tool, just go up to the help menu and search for it and you can see where it is. Anyway, I'm going to go back to the Pathfinder tool here, and this is how I can take my shapes and combine them. So if I hit this first button, which is Unite, I need to have my shape selected first though, so I'm in the pen tool. So I'm just going to Command Z to get out of that. And I am going to click on the V on my keyboard to choose the selection tool. Then I'm just going to click and drag to choose both of my shapes. And at this point I can click the Unite key, or the Unite button on the Pathfinder, and that unites or combines my two shapes. And you can see that when I did that, it used the color and stroke of the top shape. So I can undo that with Command Z, and you can see minus the front shape, and that minuses the front shape. Command Z. The next tool is Intersect, so it just keeps the part that's intersected, and I'm going to Command Z that. And then this one, which is Exclude, so now it's excluding or creating a negative shape where the two shapes are overlapping. So by far, you will probably be uniting your objects more so than using any of these other tools, but they are there and you can use them if you want to. And then of course I can go in here and I can change the color if I want, and I can even change the color of the stroke. I can make it all the same color. There's the same color. Or I could change it to make it a little more contrasty. So there is how you use the pen tool and the selection tool and the direct selection tool.